Tonight on our news, the bloodshed continues as police piece together the circumstances of yet another homicide. What investigators are saying about this latest killing straight ahead. Plus, a man who escaped from the magistrate's court complex Friday back in court today. The National Security Minister talks next steps following the security breach. Also looking for savings on fuel, how you can beat high prices at the pumps. And later, remembering a musical giant as the community mourns the passing of legendary composer Lee Callender. Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. Police are aggressively searching for the suspect or suspects responsible for the country's latest homicide at a condominium complex in western New Providence. The victim, a longtime Cable Bahamas employee, Jamila Mizik, reports.
It was a quiet scene at the Veneto condominiums on Atlantic Drive in western New Providence as concerned neighbors and colleagues looked on. Addressing media on scene, Chief Superintendent Chrislyn Skipping says it was around 10:30 a.m. on Monday when co-workers alerted police that they had not heard from their co-worker.
It was around 10:30 this morning when co-workers alerted police that they did not hear from a co-worker. Hence, police, along with the property manager here, breached the condominium occupied by the deceased, and once on the inside, discovered a Caucasian male who appears to be in his early 60s with multiple lacerations to the body.
Co-workers of the victim identifying him as Marcus Hinsby, a technical account manager at the Cable Group of Companies. Hinsby was also the president of the Homeowners Association at Veneto. Skipping says initial investigation suggests the victim had been dead in the condo for at least a day. She is appealing to anyone with any information to assist police with the investigations.
Police are investigating at this time, and I can assure you that they will speak with residents of the condominiums to see if there would be any clues or any information that can assist with the investigations.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
From the magistrate's court's complex Friday was back in court today. However, Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt suspended 25-year-old London Ramming's arraignment until Wednesday after his lawyer raised concerns about his client's mental health. Bjorn Ferguson said that he would provide the court with Ramming's medical history to support his argument that his client is not fit to plead. In the meantime, Ramming was taken to the prison to begin serving a 15-month sentence for violating his bail conditions. On Friday, Ramming pleaded guilty to cutting off the ankle bracelet he was wearing as a part of his bail for an attempted murder that stemmed from a shooting that was live-streamed on Facebook. Ramming was charged with the attempted murder of Ronaldo Georges, Evian Georges, and Jariah Adderley after he allegedly opened fire on their home on March 14. Now, since Ramming's recapture, the National Security Minister insisting that police take a closer look at security challenges at the Magistrate Court complex. Berthree McDermott is on the story.
Freedom was short-lived for a man who spent less than 72 hours on the run after officers say he escaped from the South Street Magistrates Court complex. 25-year-old London Ramming's escape came hours after he was sentenced on Friday to 15 months in prison. National Security Minister Wayne Munro weighing in, saying police will address the issue.
Everything that happens ought to be a learning experience. Only the foolish repeat the same mistakes over and over again. I have great confidence that the police, the correctional services department will be addressing any shortfalls that are highlighted.
On Friday, Ramming admitted to violating bail for attempted murder and possession of a firearm with the intent to endanger life. Ramming cut off his ankle bracelet and damaged the tracking device in the process. Ramming escaped from the cell block before police were able to take him to the Bahamas Department of Corrections. Minister Munro says he has no doubt the investigation surrounding the escape will be thorough.
I don't have the facts on that, but the police and the correctional institution clearly reevaluate security measures every time something happens.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
The Court of Appeal has decided that 3 days in prison is the appropriate sentence for an American gun convict who was deemed too sick for jail. 54-year-old Ronald Ralph Moorhead Jr. was leaving the country on June 21st when police arrested him at the Leonard Thompson International Airport after a .380 pistol with 5 rounds of ammunition was found in his checked luggage. He pleaded guilty to possessions of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition the same day and was sentenced to 12 months in prison. However, Moorhead, who has a severe case of type 1 diabetes, was released from prison 3 days later on a $10,000 cash bail pending appeal after Acting Commissioner Doan Clare swore an affidavit saying that the facility lacked the ability to manage his condition. Clare's affidavit was crucial in the appellate court's decision to quash the 12-month sentence and substituted with 3 days that Moorhead had already spent in custody. The country's military is said to be losing its strength, making it even more difficult for the Royal Bahamas Defense Force to man our borders. This news comes tonight as Defense Force Commodore Raymond King telling reporters today that nearly 50 officers are being disengaged annually through natural attrition. That number may not seem like a lot, but the Commodore says the force, which has long faced a manpower shortage, having only 1,900 officers of the ideal 3,000, struggles to keep up with its demands.
At the same token, we still have that attrition rate of some 3.5%. We normally lose about 45 persons annually for various reasons. And what we found now is as we move to decentralize our operations, it's a decision point for some of our members who may be gainfully employed otherwise.
While the military is far from its 3,000-strong army, Commodore King says the force is hoping to engage 125 new recruits by the end of October. But King explaining that many are joining the force only realize later that it may not be the job for them.
The trending has been, everyone feels as though the Defense Force is the career for them. And so they join and they find out within their first contract period, either a 3 or 5 year period, that, hey, this is not the place for me. So we have persons who may join just to be able to save funding to continue their education.
Temperatures cooling off into the low 80s this evening. Meteorologist Greg Thompson has the latest from the Weather Center. Greg?
Thanks, Natalia, and welcome everybody for our first look at weather on this Monday evening. Of course, we got some showers overnight. That's courtesy of some moisture that's associated with the Ian out there. But we'll tell you all about it in a short while. Temperatures right now in the low 80s, comfortable out there. Showers around, a couple of those light. Northeast winds at 30 miles per hour, your feels like temperature hanging out in the upper 80s. On our satellite and our radar composite, showers and thunderstorms spread across the northwest portion and the central Bahamas early this morning, like I said, courtesy of an outflow that came from Ian. And down just to the south of Cuba, just west of the Cayman Islands, you notice that spin. That is Ian right there, now a hurricane, and some more rain bands now moving across Cuba. We will continue to see those rain bands advance across the Cuba area later on tonight. So across the northwest Bahamas and portions of the central Bahamas, we could see some more showers later on, late tonight or into tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is
Still to come on our news, Dominican poachers sighted in Bahamian waters, putting the Defense Force on high alert. And are you dreading your next fill-up at the pumps? Well, we'll tell you some tips on how to save on the cost of fuel. Plus, remembering the musical legend Lee Calendar, the story when our news returns. Police say a Sunday afternoon jet ski ride turned deadly after a 43-year-old man reportedly drowned. Police say the incident happened shortly before 7 p.m. on Sunday at Goodman's Bay Beach. According to reports, the man was riding a jet ski with a woman and a child when it overturned. However, the man never surfaced. Hours later, around 4 a.m., police were called to the rear of a local resort in western New Providence, where the body of an unresponsive man was found on the shoreline. He was pronounced dead at the scene by EMS personnel. Meanwhile, Dominican fishermen are back in Bahamian waters this crawfish season, poaching the country's marine resources, rather. That's according to Defense Force Commodore Raymond King, who says a group of Dominican poachers was recently sighted. But he says attempts to make an arrest were unsuccessful.
We've had a few instances whereby we encountered Dominican fishing vessels and heading towards our banks. And the last incident, we had two vessels who would have absconded into Cuban waters. We had sought the assistance from the Cuban Border Patrol in arresting those vessels on our behalf. That didn't occur, but we shadowed those vessels south of Inagua until they would have exited the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Now, a month into this year's crawfish season, Agriculture and Marine Resources Minister Clay Sweeting telling our news that illegal poaching was down and harvests are up. On average, officials say 3.5 million pounds of crawfish is harvested during the season, but Commodore King says the force is aware of certain trends and will continue to patrol areas frequented by poachers as well as human smuggling operations.
We've also still have that trend with Cuban migrants leaving Cuba towards the United States. Our partners are making those intercepts in the southwestern Bahamas around the Key South banks and handing those persons over to us. And we still have the trend with mixed nationalities who enter the Bahamas legitimately, and before the end of their visa stay, they would move towards the northern Bahamas to be a part of those smuggling rings to the United States. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing, that we're countering with our sister law enforcement agencies.
Gas prices still soaring at some gas stations across the country. Tonight, longtime gas retailer Peter Roker is giving some insight as to why gas prices fluctuate so frequently.
We don't produce oil, and we become victims of that situation. I think that the price of gas as we know it now will go down probably to half of the amount that it is presently. But keep in mind, it's going to be fluctuating.
Roker telling residents how they can save at the pumps. The number one rule, he says, is to downsize.
Do not have 2 or 3 vehicles. We have no control over the cost of fuel. And just to mention, when you see these humongous prices like $6 and some cents and $7 and some cents, you know, the dealers like myself, only getting a very, very small amount of that, like about 54 cents.
He says it's important for Bahamians to know we are not the only ones facing high gas prices, as some states have high prices at the pumps.
The thing that I see once in a while is where people will say the Bahamas is expensive. But quite frankly, I think the merchants in this country, I think in general, are doing a very good job in terms of the pricing structure, and you'd be surprised to know that if you go away where they manufacture this merchandise, all prices are almost the same.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, a third party's perspective on the snap election victory for the PLP. Plus, Marcellus Hall is up next with the latest in sports. And later, the story of the late musical legend Lee Callender when our news returns. This is our news. Thank you for staying with us. Earlier this month, the Progressive Liberal Party marked its 2021 general election win. During last year's election, dozens of third-party candidates threw their hats into the ring as they vied for public posts. Our Jamila Mizik recently spoke with the leader of one third party who reflected on the 2021 snap election and shares her hopes for the way forward.
It is perhaps one of the oldest third parties in the Bahamas. Leader of the Bahamas Constitution Party, S. Ali McIntosh, says the party was formed in 1998 and officially launched in 1999.
Since that 1999, Bahamas Constitution has been involved in general elections, every general election except 2007, putting candidates forward.
She says the 2021 snap general election put third parties at some disadvantage in terms of getting all of the candidates. However, McIntosh says the BCP was able to put 5 candidates on the ballot.
Third parties usually have very qualified persons, good ideas, and can run the nation. It is up to the people of the country to give voice and give credibility, give power to a third party to be able to bring the level of good governance that is expected or that the people want.
The BCP leader says moving forward, their focus is on reconstructing the nation.
We believe it is necessary to go to constitutional democracy. That is a democracy where the Queen no longer is the executive manager of the country. So that is one of the primary reasons, is to change the status of the Bahamas from parliamentary monarchy or parliamentary democracy to constitutional democracy, so that the 4 or the 3 major arms of government, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, will be accountable to each other.
McIntosh says they are committed to holding the government's feet to the fire regarding constitutional matters. Reporting for our news, I'm Jamila Mizik.
Thanks, Jamila. And the Cybots force a Game 7. Meanwhile, youth football heads to Florida. Marcellus Hall is up now with a check on sports. Marcellus?
Bahamas Youth Flag Football League, busy this past weekend. They attended the Flag Football World Championship Tour in Orlando, a major qualifying tournament over the weekend. BYFFL took 3 teams. They competed in the 11U, the 13U, and the 17U divisions and did pretty well. The 11U had a tournament record of 0-3. 17U team, however, they were 2-0 in the first round of play, and they earned the second seed, advanced to the semifinals there, and did well as well. And then the under 17 team, and they got by to the 19-12 in the semifinals, where they lost to the West Boynton Saints 19-12. All in all, though, the 13U team had a rough start in the tournament. They were able to rally back, crown the champions of the 13U division, beating Spring Hill All-Stars 20-13. Good performance there all around, and certainly one to be well proud of for the Bahamas and the Bahamas Youth Flag Football League. Meanwhile, great honor for one of the country's top track and field athletes historically, Frank Rutherford. First Bahamian to win a medal in track events at the 1992 Olympic Games in Barcelona, Spain. Honored today by Arawak Homes as a new subdivision named in his honor. It will now be called Frank Rutherford Close. Members of the media in attendance, along with other distincted individuals, including the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, the Honorable Mario Bolag, Carl Lewis, and Olajuwon, Akeem Olajuwon, the best friend of Frank Rutherford. Frank also in attendance and feeling pretty good. We'll give you much more details about this coming up a little bit later on. And that is your check on sports for you here on this beautiful Monday. I'm Marcellus Hall.
Still
Back
ahead
to
on
you.
our news tonight, meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the weather center still tracking the tropics. And later, remembering the musical legend Lee Callender. It's all coming up when our news returns.
Your child's future is full of super possibilities, so you need a super college savings plan to match. With an RF Educational Investment Account, you can get returns well above the traditional savings account. You can use the funds to cover a variety of educational expenses at home or abroad. And if things don't go as planned, the funds are easily transferable. Plan for all your child's super possibilities with the RF Educational Investment Account. Get started today at rfgroup.com.
Welcome back to our news. Hurricane Ian has his eyes set on Florida as another system is expected to strengthen in the Atlantic. Greg is back in the Weather Center, this time with our extended forecast. Greg.
Thanks again, Natalia, and welcome back, everybody, for our second look at weather. Ian is now a hurricane pushing across just to the south of Cuba, actually, and west of the Cayman Islands. Also in the open Atlantic, the National Hurricane Center actually watching another area, starting to get a little busy out there once again. In the central Atlantic, tropical wave, they're giving a very high chance for this, 70% over the next couple of days for formation, but that will stay out there in the open Atlantic and be not really of a concern for us. Of course, Ian is the main concern right now. Rain bands associated with that spreading across Cuba, Jamaica, as well as the Cayman Islands. This is now a very strong hurricane. It's expected to strengthen to a Category 2 hurricane, possibly even a Category 3 before it crosses western Cuba. Once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, the eastern Gulf of Mexico, it's supposed to pass across what we call the loop current in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. That is actually going to help this system to really intensify, and it's anticipated that this could make it to a Category 4 hurricane once it crosses western Cuba and heads towards the west coast of Florida. Rain bands associated with this system will be spreading across the area. We will not really see tropical storm conditions, but with those rain bands, we could see some wind gusts to tropical storm conditions, mainly across the northwest Bahamas as the system parallels the Florida coast. Anticipated that this system will continue to move towards the north. By Thursday, it's expected to be just to the west of Tampa. And of course, more rain bands will be spreading across the area. So we're looking for a couple of days of some wet weather, and we're asking you to continue to monitor progress because this could take a jog back towards the east. And as it does that, if it does that, it could pose some more problems for us down the line. Taking a look at the rainfall amounts expected with the system, not much in terms of any significant rainfall. We did have about 2 to 3 inches of rainfall falling here in the capital early this morning, but more rainfall expected, about 2 to 4 inches expected across the northwest Bahamas. Isolated amounts could be even higher. Boating forecast, we're asking you boaters in the northwest and central Bahamas to remain near port. Your winds will be out of the south to southeast at 15 to 25 knots. They will be gusting high at times in those rain bands. Seas running 4 to 6 feet, but up to 8 feet out there in the open water. High tide will be at 9 p.m. tonight. For the southeast Bahamas, caution flag for you guys down there. East to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. Seas running 4 to 7 feet over open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast. Over the next several days, we anticipate more showers and thunderstorms associated with the rain bands moving across the area. But by Friday, we expect things to be improving and conditions will be nice for the weekend. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe Monday night, everybody.
Thanks, Greg. Legendary composer, musician, and teacher Lee Callender passed away over the weekend at the age of 64 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. In an exclusive interview, Callender's friend and colleague Adrian Archer reflects on their friendship and talks about his lasting legacy. Marlena Leonard reports.
Musicians across the nation are celebrating the life of composer, musician, and teacher, Maestro Lee Callender, after he passed away over the weekend. We sat down with the director of music at Christ Church Cathedral and Callender's longtime friend, Adrian Archer, to remember the local legend.
He was the modern Bahamian Mozart. Lee was always a giver. Lee always shared his gift, even though he may not have been paid for it, but Lee was teaching all the time. He was coaching all the time. He was playing everywhere.
That legacy of sharing his gift and teaching has been reflected in the condolences that have and continue to pour in from across the country, from former students, colleagues, family, and friends on social media. When asked how we can best carry Callender's legacy forward,
I think if we're going to think about Lee in a manner and represent him and try to keep his legacy alive, it would be being the best musicians we can be. We have so much talent in this country, so much that he has himself honed and crafted. So those people who have encountered him can just say, I met Mr. Callender and this is what he meant to me, and I'm going to make myself better because I met Lee Callender.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
What a great story. Thanks, Marlena. And condolences to the Callender family from the entire Our News team. Thank you for joining us tonight for Our News. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.